Our speaker for the 2018 Brandeis School of Law convocation is Ms. Rachael Denhollander. Rachael Denhollander is a 2009 graduate of the Oak Brook College of Law and is admitted to practice in California. She's also a former competitive gymnast and came to national prominence in 2016 when she was the first woman to come forward and publicly accuse Dr. Larry Nassar, the Michigan State University sports physician, of sexual abuse. Ms. Denhollander's willingness to do so is widely credited for leading scores of others to speak out as well. As Louisville State Senator Morgan McGarvey said, and I quote, "It took the courage and bravery of one woman to stand up and speak out to trigger the events that led to Dr. Nassar's conviction." Close quote. On the day of Dr. Nassar's sentencing, Judge Rosemary Aquilina said to her, "You started the tidal wave. You made all of this happen. You made all of these voices matter. Your sister survivors and I thank you. You are the bravest person I have ever had in my courtroom." Ms. Denhollander has written an op-ed about these experiences in the New York Times. She has appeared on most of the known national and international media outlets. Time magazine recently named her as one of 2018's most influential people. But perhaps most strikingly for me, she's using all of this attention to continue to do very important work. For example, in March, she spoke to a panel of the UN Commission on the Status of Women. She's worked in the Michigan Senate. She's just returned, in fact, from Michigan, despite being 6.5 months pregnant, from the Michigan Senate, and tomorrow leaves for California, where she's going to do mediation. She says, however, that education is her passion, and so she very warmly accepted our invitation to come and be our graduation speaker. We're absolutely delighted to have Rachael Denhollander with us today. Please join me in thanking her and welcoming her.
Thank you. It is truly an honor to be asked to take part in this day, recognizing the graduates of Brandeis Law School. I had the privilege recently of getting to spend time with some of the leaders in the class and to learn more about what your class stands for and some of the incredible things that you have been involved in already. And it was truly an encouragement to me to see how much time and talent and effort and energy has been poured back into your community, poured back into fighting for justice and speaking truth, and fighting for those who don't have a voice. So thank you. I know for many of you, carving out your class identity has been a challenge, as so much turmoil has swirled around the university as a whole, and there has been so much transition, even within your own law school. And yet through this, you have chosen to persevere. You have remained focused. You have remained diligent. And I am confident that this will not be the last time that you need to tune out confusion and controversy to remain focused on your end goal. I also thoroughly enjoyed conversing with the graduates about the ins and outs of law school because it brought back wonderful memories for me of my own time, even in bar prep. It has been almost 10 years since I graduated, which sounds like a really long time when I think about it. But these are memories that I treasure and look back on. And the only major casualty I'm happy to share with you of my time in law school is that I have a long-lasting hatred of Beethoven's Toccata and Fugue, because I had the privilege of living at home during my time in law school, which was a wonderful blessing. But we lived in a very small home, and my study area was about 20 feet from my sister's upright grand piano. And during my final month of bar prep, she was in scholarship competition, and she was perfecting Beethoven's Toccata and Fugue. And for those of you who are not familiar with that piece, it is a very dynamic piece with a lot of bass notes. And out of all the wonderful things that can be said about my sister, two of them are that she's very faithful in practicing, and she plays with a lot of energy. So you can imagine what that meant for me, trying to write essays and perform MBEs 20 feet away from an upright grand piano that seemed to be in perpetual use. I got so desperate for peace and quiet that I actually wound up sitting outside in my parents' car in the middle of winter in Michigan to try to find some solace for studying, and I could still hear her outside playing. So I wound up making an appeal to my local church to be allowed to sit in a classroom, and discovered that they don't heat the church in between Sunday services. So the vast majority of my bar prep was done in my mother's oversized down winter coat with a latte to try to keep me warm. And yet, 10 years later, I have nothing but good memories, save for hating Beethoven's Toccata and Fugue. So the moral of my story is, based on everything I have heard about your class and your law school, I am confident that even through the stress of bar prep, you will be able to look back on your time with beautiful and wonderful memories. Nonetheless, I wish you much peace and quiet and warmth in the coming months as you study. Spending time with members of your class also has caused me to reflect even more on what has stayed with me positively from my experience in law school. I was blessed, as you all have been, to have professors that pour time and energy into me. And there was a threefold challenge that my professor from trial advocacy gave to me when I graduated, and I want to pass that on to you today, because I believe it is very relevant for the goals and ambitions and characteristics of your class, particularly for a class that has been so dedicated to using their legal training to make the world a better place. My professors reminded us over and over again that our legal training was going to put us in a position where we would be sought for help regularly, not just by clients, but also by friends, acquaintances, and sometimes even strangers who happened to find out we were attorneys. And most importantly, they emphasized that many times when we would be approached for help or counsel, it would be by people who were facing very real suffering and very real challenges, people who desperately needed help, and who would be in a very real sense dependent not only on our skill as an attorney, but on our legal ethic, on our integrity, and on our compassion. And I understood this to a point, but it wasn't until I graduated and experienced being approached on a consistent basis by friends and acquaintances for help that I began to realize the real implications of what my professors had challenged me to do. Because the reality is that the world of law and public policy are very foreign worlds to most people, and yet they have incredible real-world impact on almost everyone. Effects that can be to a large degree within a skilled professional's control, for good or ill. And because this world is so foreign to most, yet has such great impact on their lives, your legal training gives you incredible privilege, and it gives you incredible power. Power that you will wield either for self-interest and personal gain, or privilege that you will use to better your community and to better those around you. And as a guiding principle for how to wield this power and to use this privilege, my professors left me with a 3-part challenge. They told me, do this, do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly. I grew in my understanding of these principles as I was approached for help by those who needed it. But I can say that they have taken on a much deeper meaning for me over these last 2 years during this fight to stop Larry Nassar and hold institutions accountable for letting one of the worst predators in U.S. history abuse children for decades. And as I have walked alongside literally hundreds of sexual assault survivors who are experiencing the realities of the legal system for the first time, I have found myself in the very unique position of being an attorney and yet completely at the mercy of other attorneys who held everything, including my reputation, in their hands. Instead of being the person who was sought for help, as I was used to, I was the person seeking help. In fact, the very first person I sought for counsel, and one of the first people in my life to ever even know of my abuse, was an old family friend who was an assistant prosecuting attorney. When I realized I could still file a police complaint, I reached out to this family friend for his input, and he gave of his time and his resources and his skill to recheck my legal research, to look at the evidentiary details in my case, to discuss and provide counsel regarding how I was going to handle the case in the press, and most importantly, he offered to write a letter on my behalf to the investigators, vouching for my character and urging them to take my claims seriously. And he offered to come to court as a character witness for me. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't alone because of this attorney. And his legal training was something he used in a very specific way to enter into my grief and to fight for justice with me at a deeply personal level when he did not have to, but when I needed it the most. His position as a local prosecutor meant his voice had sway where mine suddenly did not. Whereas the victim, I could not do what he could do. And he used that power to aid me when I had nothing to offer in return. Because of his legal skills and his personal integrity, he was uniquely positioned to help me begin the process of bringing down one of the worst pedophiles in U.S. history. And he did it without ever having any official legal involvement in the case. His care for me and the way he used that privilege and power, especially during the first few months when life seemed the darkest, was truly a gift and meant more than he will probably ever know. This attorney did justice. He helped me fight for what was right. He loved mercy. He had compassion on me and these other survivors, and he utilized his legal skills to show it. And he walked humbly. He did not arrogantly refuse to help, though I could offer nothing in return, but instead used what he had been given and the position he had to help someone who is in need. And I have also experienced the opposite reality, because I have been the victim left in control of and entirely dependent on a county prosecutor who did not possess these traits. I have seen both the incredible skill and healing and benefit that comes from an attorney that uses their privilege well and one who does not. Before any charges were levied in my case against Larry, there was a battle behind the scenes on whether or not he was going to be charged at all for any sexual assault he had committed against any survivor. Despite everything I had done and how publicly I had come forward to make this happen, Larry was going to walk away because of an attorney who was interested in an easy conviction to put on her political resume. At the time the decision was made not to prosecute him for sexual assault, I and around 24 other women already had open police files, including the non-medical survivor. I was already an international headline. I was in the throes of defending my reputation and desperately trying to get someone to listen to what was going on. And this county prosecutor agreed to drop every single charge in exchange for a small child porn plea that would have given him a slap on the wrist, almost no jail time. He would have retained his medical license, and he would have continued to abuse children for decades more. And the police chief picked up the phone, and he called a different attorney. And he asked the Attorney General to come in and to exercise his authority and to look at our case files. And a woman named Angela Povolitis walked in, and she looked at our case files, and she said, "I will take every single one, and I will fight for all of them." And as survivor after survivor came forward, that's exactly what she did. And when Larry agreed to plead guilty, Angela would only agree to a deal if every single survivor was able to testify at his victim sentencing and give a victim impact statement so that everyone would have a voice. And we had two judges, two trained attorneys, who also saw the value in justice and mercy, and they agreed to this arrangement. So an attorney who had very little interest in justice, who had no compassion or mercy on the survivors, and who was more interested in self-gain than humble service, nearly let one of the worst pedophiles in recorded history walk away. And an attorney who did justice for all of us, who had compassion and mercy, and who used her privilege humbly for service instead of self-promotion, took down one of the worst pedophiles in U.S. history. And she, in conjunction with two more attorneys who shared these principles, gave a voice to 256 women, a voice that was broadcast around the world and has had global impact. And what is most incredible to me is that none of the attorneys who I just referenced, not the attorney I initially disclosed to or any of the women who came in, had any idea what impact they were going to have. No one knew what this was going to turn into. But because these attorneys were committed to doing justice and loving mercy and walking humbly when they had no benefit from it, because they were committed to those principles, they have literally changed the world. And they have impacted hundreds of survivors on a deeply personal level. I don't know what opportunities your class is going to have when you walk out these doors, but I do know that your legal training gives you privilege, and it gives you power. And wherever you work, in whatever vocation you choose, you will be in contact with people who desperately need your skill and your compassion and your integrity. And you are surrounded by a community that needs your skill and your passion and your integrity. So my challenge to you as you exit these doors and rightly rejoice in the incredible accomplishments that you have made is to never forget the passion and the interest that brought you here, and to never forget those around you who are in need of what you now have. My hope for the Brandeis Law School class of 2018 is not just that you will see great success on the bar exam, because I am confident of that, but that you will leave the school, you will enter your communities, and you will do justice. You will love mercy, and you will walk humbly with the privilege you have been given. Congratulations, graduates of 2018.